When you think of ancient Rome, you probably imagine powerful emperors and epic battles. But what if I told you that some of those emperors were secretly battling addiction? That a simple fish could send you into terrifying hallucinations? Opium wasn't just medicine. It ruled the lives of many Romans, even emperors. And dangerous drugs were everywhere, from religious rituals to deadly poisonings. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll hear about one Roman emperor whose opium use changed everything, and the shocking truth behind Rome's secret drug culture, the empire and its hidden addiction. We often picture Rome as the mighty empire of stone and steel, legions marching, senators debating, gladiators fighting. But behind the grandeur, there was a darker story. Rome was one of the greatest consumers of drugs in the ancient world, not recreationally, but out of necessity. The Roman elite, soldiers, and even children relied on a vast pharmacopoeia, a collection of herbal remedies, powerful poisons, and psychoactive substances. Some were used for medicine, others for rituals, and many more for escape. Opium, the silent ruler of Rome. At the heart of ancient Rome's drug culture stood a deceptively beautiful plant, the opium poppy. From its delicate petals came a thick, milky sap, opium. In today's world, we associate it with the grim realities of heroin and morphine addiction. But to the Romans, this substance was both a sacred healer and a sinister crutch, a double-edged sword hidden in plain sight. Roman physicians, from field medics on blood-soaked battlefields to elite healers in marble-tiled villas, prescribed opium with near-religious faith. It was their universal remedy. It soothed everything from battlefield wounds to stomach ulcers, sleeplessness, migraines, diarrhea, and persistent coughing. Mixed into wines or rolled into pills, opium's pain-relieving and sedative qualities were unmatched and dangerously seductive. But this miracle medicine had a hidden curse: addiction. Rome, for all its advancements, did not yet understand the long-term effects of chemical dependency. What began as healing often transformed into quiet enslavement. Patients would return for more, not because they were still sick, but because their bodies now demanded it. Opium's reach extended into every layer of society. Farmers used it to numb aching limbs after harvests. Soldiers took it to forget the horrors of war. Wealthy nobles used it to fall asleep after lavish feasts. And in marble halls, emperors themselves leaned on its effects to mask physical pain and mental strain. Rome was, without exaggeration, the largest consumer of opium in the ancient world. It was a silent ruler, comforting, commanding, and impossible to escape. Marcus Aurelius, philosopher, emperor, and opium addict. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, stands tall in the history books as a stoic icon. The emperor who ruled not with tyranny, but with reflection, reason, and restraint. His meditations are still quoted today, revered as a guide to inner strength. But behind the marble image of serenity was a man racked with chronic pain, deep anxiety, and a growing dependence on one of the most powerful drugs of the ancient world, opium. During his grueling military campaigns along the Danube frontier, Marcus suffered from intense chest pains and stomach discomfort, likely exacerbated by the stress of war and the crushing weight of leadership. The burden of commanding thousands of men, defending the empire's borders, and navigating court politics took its toll. In the absence of modern medicine, he turned to what many Romans considered a miracle cure: opium. The Roman historian Cassius Dio noted that Marcus used opium regularly to manage his ailments, both physical and emotional. It dulled the pain, soothed his nerves, and allowed him to continue leading. But with relief came chains. His use became habitual. When he was forced to go without it, he suffered what Roman doctors called dry humors, a vague term that eerily mirrors today's descriptions of opioid withdrawal: tremors, night sweats, fatigue, and emotional despair. Still, he endured. Despite his dependency, Marcus led armies, passed laws, and shaped a philosophical legacy that outlived empires. Was his stoic clarity born from inner strength, or quietly sustained by a drug that ruled him as much as he ruled Rome? The drugged army. It wasn't just emperors who relied on drugs. Roman soldiers carried poppy-based remedies in their packs, used to dull pain from brutal wounds. Opium was often administered on the battlefield, and soldiers developed dependencies that lingered long after the fighting stopped. But this created a hidden epidemic. Thousands of soldiers, expected to be tough and unbreakable, secretly battled addiction. Some historians argue that widespread opium use weakened the Roman military's long-term effectiveness, contributing to the empire's slow decline. Hallucinogenic fish? Yes, it's real. If you think opium is shocking, wait until you hear about the dream fish of ancient Rome, the Sarpa salpa. This striped Mediterranean fish was notorious for causing vivid hallucinations when eaten. The culprit? A toxin accumulated from its diet of seaweed that contains compounds chemically similar to LSD. Roman diners who consumed Sarpa salpa reported seeing animals that weren't there, hearing voices and experiencing delirium, symptoms terrifyingly close to modern psychedelic trips. One documented case from modern times involved a man who ate this fish and spent over 36 hours hallucinating, vomiting, and losing his grip on reality. Imagine Roman philosophers, soldiers, and nobles unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, ingesting this fish, hallucinating through dinner parties, council meetings, or even battles. Drugs as rituals and poisons. Roman society had a complicated relationship with drugs, both reverent and fearful. To them, these substances were not just tools of medicine or pleasure, but bridges to the divine and instruments of death. In many ways, drugs occupied a spiritual and political gray zone, teetering between sacred and sinister. In religious ceremonies, certain plants held mystical power. Mandrake, belladonna, and henbane were often used by priests, priestesses, and mystics to enter trance states. These rituals were believed to open a channel to the gods or to the dead. Consuming these herbs in carefully measured doses could result in vivid hallucinations, dreamlike visions, and altered consciousness. But the line between enlightenment and fatal overdose was razor thin. One wrong measurement, and a divine communion became a funeral rite. Outside of the temples, drugs were wielded with more malice. Poisoning became an art form in elite Roman circles. Substances derived from nightshade, hemlock, and arsenic were stealthily mixed into wine or honeyed delicacies, slowly killing enemies under the guise of illness. Assassins were often chemists in disguise. This ever-present threat bred paranoia. Wealthy Romans employed food tasters, slaves or servants who ate first, to ensure nothing was laced. Emperors, in particular, became obsessed with avoiding poison, often surrounding themselves with trusted apothecaries and taster squads. But drugs weren't just for murder. They were tools of manipulation. Aphrodisiacs, sedatives, and hallucinogens were slipped into cups to bend lovers, lull rivals to sleep, or drive targets to madness. In Rome, a simple drink could determine fate or seal it. The medicinal arsenal: plants, animals, and potions. Roman doctors were remarkably advanced for their time. They harnessed an impressive knowledge of botany and zoology to create medicines. Poppy-derived opium, willow bark, an early form of aspirin, mandrake roots, and even secret extracts from animals were all part of the pharmacological toolkit. One bizarre example is the salma porgy, a fish whose toxins caused hallucinations resembling those triggered by LSD. Romans understood the dual nature of many substances, healing in small doses, deadly in larger ones. The price of power, addiction, and decline. The dark side of Rome's drug culture was addiction. Many high-ranking officials and commoners alike became dependent on opium and other substances. While drugs helped them cope with the empire's brutal realities, they also undermined their health and decision-making. Emperor Commodus, son of Marcus Aurelius, is often cited as a ruler whose reckless behavior and possible drug use hastened Rome's downfall. Though sources are scarce, rumors of his addiction and erratic actions persist. The widespread reliance on drugs among Rome's elite may have contributed to the erosion of the empire's strength, leaving it vulnerable to internal strife and external invasion. A legacy that lives on. Despite the dangers, the Roman relationship with drugs left a lasting legacy. Many modern medicines trace their origins to Roman herbal knowledge. Opium paved the way for contemporary painkillers. Their experiments with psychoactive plants foreshadowed centuries of human exploration into the mind. The story of Roman drug culture reminds us that history is never as clean as textbooks suggest. It is messy, human, and full of contradictions. The final shocking truth: the emperor's secret. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, was not just a leader, but a man struggling to maintain control over his own body and mind. His dependency on opium was both his secret weapon and his hidden chain. Without the drug, he might have crumbled under the pressures of war and governance. With it, he achieved greatness, but at a personal cost few dare to discuss. Ancient Rome was a civilization of power and pain, wisdom and weakness, conquest and chaos. Drugs were woven into its very fabric, shaping history in ways we are only beginning to understand. So next time you think of Rome, remember, behind every empire lies a human story, sometimes fueled by the very substances they tried to master. If this surprised you, subscribe for more untold history. What would you risk for power? Would you take the emperor's opium? Or avoid the hallucinogenic fish at all costs? Tell us below.